episode of The World Today. And of course, we'll be bringing you the latest regarding the news here in Egypt and also the world in Ramadan. And we'll begin with الأهرام online, from which we read, Egypt Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab visits troops in North Sinai. Radio Misr held an interview with Prime Minister Ibrahim on Tuesday to review the government achievements, state media reported. The interview discussed Egypt's economic vision and the steps achieved in a way of boosting security and economic fields. The program gives the chance to Egypt's citizens to talk to the Prime Minister about the current state of the country. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab and Health Minister Aidel Adawi visited soldiers injured last week's terrorist attacks in North Sinai. Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis launched simultaneous attacks on the multiple checkpoints last Wednesday, leaving at least 21 dead. Mahlab also visited a number of security and military checkpoints in the region to express his solidarity with the troops. On Saturday, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi visited troops in North Sinai with his military uniform for the first time since he took office in June 2014 to show respect and recognition for their part in the fight against terrorism. The decade-long insurgency in North Sinai has intensified in the past 2 years, with hundreds of army and police personnel killed. The army has also announced the killing of hundreds of terrorists and launching massive attacks there. So for more on this subject, we're very glad to have with us over the phone Mr. Gamal Assam Eddin, journalist. Mr. Gamal, good evening. Mr. Gamal. Mr. Gamal?
Do you hear me? Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you very well.
Yes. So I was just reading news regarding the speech by Prime Minister, or the interview by Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab with Radio Misr today. Did you have a chance to listen to the interview?
I didn't listen to all the interview, but I just listened to what he said about the new anti-terrorism law.
Yes, and I mean, if we're going to focus first on the interview by Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab today, so how do you evaluate the performance of the government until now during this very critical period, and at the same time during this very tough conditions the government is working under?
I think the government is working on different fronts. First of all, you know that Egypt now is facing a new wave of terrorism. You saw last week the prosecutor general was killed in a car bomb attack, and then the army faced a very massive attack in North Sinai. So the government is working in two fronts. The first front is how to safeguard the country against terrorism. And the second front is how to achieve development with high rates, because the country is facing very huge economic challenges, such as covering the budget deficit, improving public services, so achieving the development in different sectors of the country, especially North Sinai. So I see that the government of Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab is facing two challenges. The first challenge is how to stand up to terrorism, and the second challenge is to improve services to achieve high economic growth rates.
Yes. Mr. Gamal, also, of course, we all know that Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab is a very good example of the government official who does not sit in his office. He's 24 hours visiting many places, and at the same time, of course, he visited the injured soldiers today. How do these visits and how do these activities help in, for example, motivating the soldiers or motivating the people to work and have enthusiasm to do whatever they do, but in a very good way?
I think it is very important for people to see that high government officials are always working on the field. You know that, as you said, that cabinet ministers usually prefer to sit in their offices, giving directives to second-rate officials to implement jobs on the field. But now we are seeing the senior official, Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab, is always keen. He has always keen to pay field visits to different governorates to projects which are implemented on the ground. We know that the Prime Minister Mahlab is originally an engineer, an architecture engineer. He was chairman of the great Arab contractors company, so he is by nature loving to work on the field. Now we see him that these field visits give citizens a good impression that government ministers, beginning with the Prime Minister until other cabinet ministers, are always keen to contact with people on the ground. In spite of all the difficulties and the challenges facing them, you know that we are now in the holy month of Ramadan. People are fasting in hot temperatures, and that we are facing also dangers of terrorism. And in spite of this, it is good for people to see senior officials paying field visits all the time to project locations, to contact with them. This is important to raise the morale of people and to give impression to people that senior officials are always keen to follow up the projects all the time, not just by staying in their offices, but paying field visits to locations of projects.
Yes. Mr. Gamal, also with only maybe less than 30 days left for the inauguration of the new Suez Canal project, how do you see this? I mean, the dream is going to be fulfilled and it's going to become true within less than 30 days. So, of course, many world countries doubted that Egyptians can really do this and abide by the deadline that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has put since day one. How do you see this international event, and how do you see that we are approaching to fulfill this dream?
As far as I remember, that President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, when he visited the location of this project 1 year ago, the engineers told him that this implementation of this project will take 1 year and a half, 2 years or 1 year and a half. But President al-Sisi insisted that this project takes just 1 year. And we see that he is keen now that this project is completed on time in just 1 year. So we see that all companies and all agencies responsible for implementing this project, that they will finish it on time and on schedule. And this should be a new pattern for the government business, that national projects should be implemented in the shortest possible time, and that on schedule. This a new attitude that we hope that will prevail in all of Egypt. We know that for in many years that projects have always been delayed, not implemented on schedule. So we hope that this project will give a new example, will give a new precedent, that great projects, national projects, mega development projects are always implemented in a very short time and on schedule. This gives a lot of seriousness to the government action, to the government policies, and give credibility to statements and to senior government officials, to the president himself.
Yes.
As you said, we have still around 30 days for this project to be inaugurated. And I think that the more we approach this deadline, the more we will have greater international attention to Egypt, because this project is very important. It will double the Suez Canal. We know the Suez Canal now is one way. Since it was built, since it was established around 150 years ago. It was completed in 1869. So this is a new dramatic development, a new dramatic
yes, and of course this change will not have
project.
This change will not have, of course, its effect on Egypt only, but on the whole region, of course. Mr. Gamal, would you please stay with me over the phone? We're going to read another headline from Al-Ahram online also regarding the anti-terror draft law. Egypt's political parties slam anti-terror draft law. Egypt's political parties slammed anti-terror draft law, and several parties have declared their support to the journalist syndicate, which have criticized the law for curtailing press freedom. A number of Egypt's political forces have declared their support for the journalist syndicate in rejecting a new counter-terrorism draft law soon set to be passed in the country. The press syndicate has said that the new law, if passed, will trample on press freedoms and enable the authorities to censor the media. Several Egyptian political parties have denounced the new law, which has been approved by the country's Judicial Council and Cabinet and only awaits President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi's go-ahead, as he currently holds legislative powers in the ongoing absence of the parliament. Others have called for more time and research prior to passing the law. The Socialist Popular Alliance, the WAF Party, and Social Democratic Party were among those who rejected the law. The Socialist Popular Alliance believes that the new law reveals that the Egyptian state clearly intends to reduce terrorism to a mere security concern that can be eliminated with harsher sanctions. The party's deputy head said the media needs to involve the Egyptian people in its fight against terrorism, he said, and it needs to be reinforced with justice, freedom, and democracy. Meanwhile, the committee member of Egypt's oldest political party, Al-Wafd, said that his party has launched a national dialogue that would discuss the newly drafted law. And of course, Mr. Gamal, we are all having our will to fight terrorism, and we are waiting for this anti-terror law. So how do you see this rejection that took place, and was it expected or not?
In my personal point of view, I don't think that all political parties have rejected this law. Mm-hmm. The article in Al-Ahram online speaks about just 2 or 3 political parties.
Yes.
And the names of these parties you mentioned, most of them belong to what we call revolutionary forces. Mm-hmm. The the Egyptian Socialist Democratic Party, the Socialist Alliance, all of these political parties are opposition to the government, and are taking a very radical line against the government and the President al-Sisi in person. So I do not agree that all political parties are against or slammed this anti-terrorism law as article claims. As far as I know, that political parties just said that there should be a balance between national security needs and reserving public freedom, and especially freedom of speech. So they said that there is a necessity for a new tougher anti-terrorism law to stand up to the challenges facing the country, especially after we saw in Sinai and the killing of Prosecutor General. Mm-hmm. But they said there should be a national dialogue between the government and all political forces over this law. Concerning what the press syndicate says about this law, they said that just Article 33 of this law could send the journalists to a minimum 2 years in jail if a journalist was convicted of publishing the false news. Mm-hmm. The government, the Prime Minister himself, and the Minister of Parliamentary Affairs, Ibrahim Al-Hanidi, indicated this article. They said that this article speaks about journalists who publish false news deliberately. You see, there is a condition first that if a journalist like me published false news deliberately to cause public disorder or to spread chaos in the country or to spread lies about the army, or published statements that contradict with official statements by the government, This
Actually,
in these cases, in these 4 cases, he could face in prison 2-year minimum in prison. Also,
actually,
this
Mr.
law
Gamal,
violates the constitution.
Mr.
But
Gamal,
in response by Prime Minister today, he said that there will be a dialogue, and the government is ready to listen to the press syndicate if we have any proposed amendments of this article. So there is no final word about this law.
And of course, Mr. Gamal, we are sure that the government would do its best, of course, in order to have the best law in order to fight terrorism. And Mr. Gamal Asamuddin, journalist, we would like to thank you very much for your analysis and for joining us over the phone. Thank you. And dear viewers, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more coming up on Nile International. Have a pleasant evening.